What's going on, FA Nation? Happy Tuesday, and welcome to the Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS live stream. I am James Grande, joined by Jon Impemba. John, what's up, brother? We had an 8-game slate to break down today. You were the man on the playbook. Lots of injury news early. Well, lots of being one significant piece of injury news. Giannis Antetokounmpo ruled out, which means happy Eric Bledsoe, Ersan Ilyasova, and Chris Middleton, John. Day.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the chalk now. Right. It is every single time Giannis is out, we sort of, immediately know exactly who to play. All of them have tremendous upside. We know the usage rates for Middleton and Bledsoe are tremendous. Both of them, 33% usage rate, both 1.4 fantasy points per minute. It's a two-man show. And then Ilyasova comes off the bench into the starting lineup at essentially min-price. Fortunately, he's priced up a little bit more on DraftKings, I think it is, or FanDuel is like $3,700 on one of the two there. But in the past, he's been dead dirt mid-price, and he goes for a double-double and like 10x. Still 10x upside with him tonight because there's, a 240 total in this game. So, I mean, yeah, it's Chalk City with those Bucks.
Up to 242, even with Giannis out. We've gotten a 2-point increase since Vegas first set the line. Just some recent injury news. Jason Tatum officially ruled out. Jay Crowder ruled out, and Bruno Fernando officially ruled out. John Collins is starting at center for Atlanta tonight. But it is, yeah. I mean, he has been playing there for quite a bit, but never a fun individual matchup when you have to run up against Marc Gasol for 30+ minutes. But John, let's hop into your playbook. 8-game slate, lots to break down. Starting with the point guard position, I think it's safe to say, I just want to start at Ben Simmons. Would you axe Simmons off your player pool, considering we have the return of Joel Embiid, and Simmons is priced really, really high at $10K on DraftKings and $9.8 on FanDuel?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely expensive. The thing with Simmons as well, he's produced better of late with Embiid off the floor. Typically, Simmons has benefited having Embiid there with him. So I'm probably not going to pay. There's other guys at that similar price point we're looking to spend up on. So yeah, I think we can agree. And then the analysis in the playbook, I wrote, if Embiid sits, he's worth it. If he plays, probably not.
Right, and those other guys you mentioned are going to be quite interesting spend-ups in Luka Doncic and Trae Young. Luka playing on the second night of a back-to-back, been hobbled a little bit, but there is potential for him to be without Kristaps Porzingis. We kind of speculated on the podcast. We weren't sure if Porzingis was going to play on the second leg of a back-to-back. He is officially still listed as questionable. That, unfortunately, is at 8:30, so we don't know if that is even going to come to light before roster lock. So probably, take your shot there. But then we have Trae Young, who is coming off a masterful performance in light, obviously a lot to do with Kobe Bryant's, recent passing. He obviously dedicated that game to him and Gigi. How are you breaking down Young and Doncic? Do you have a preference of the two, one cash, one tournaments, or how do you feel about both of them?
I mean, yeah, I'm definitely big on Trae Young over Luka Doncic tonight. Just saving the money. Especially, and I see the ownership that we have on FanDuel, where Luka's expected to be, almost 50% owned. I understand that. You and I kind of had a little bit of fun with the builds on FanDuel. You can do, spend up everywhere, essentially, given it all the value. But that said, I think I'm still liking Trae here. You get the value, and he's not giving you different production. You can't even really say that Luka's, upside has been greater, because we've seen 70, 80 points out of Trae Young this year, 60 points out of Trae Young this year. So, and Young's done it twice against Toronto. He's averaging 68 fantasy points against them. So, I'm in on Trae Young tonight. I'll take the savings on DraftKings of was it $1,800 or something like that, $1,900, and then you get the $1,000 difference on FanDuel. If I'm picking between the two, Trae Young is where I'm going, especially on FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about 70-point upside. He's done it twice in his last 3 games. So,
yeah.
Pretty good there. Let's move down the point guard list where we have Kemba Walker, $8,000 over on FanDuel, 7,800 on DraftKings. We have Lonzo Ball here in the mid tier, 7K on FanDuel, 7,400 on DraftKings. And then everybody's favorite chalk play, Eric Bledsoe and Colin Sexton. Those are pretty much the value to mid tier guys. Break down this rest of the position, John.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Bledsoe's ownership is probably a little bit too low on FanDuel. Right. At $5,800, I feel like he's probably closer to like 70% owned. Then we show at 35%. I have him in every lineup tonight. There's no reason to fade a player in this position. Having the fact that there's no Giannis, knowing the usage rate that's going to be there, and this is one of the top 3 matchups in the NBA this year. It's up against Washington. It's up against Atlanta. It's up against Houston. Like those 3 teams, give up points to everybody. And Washington, I think, is I had it in front of me earlier, but they've basically given up like 150 points on average, it seems like, to their opponent. So yeah, I mean, hard to fade Bledsoe there. And that kind of give you a good spot to be contrarian elsewhere. I mean, Kemba Walker really playing well of late. 54 and 60 DraftKings points the last 2 games, both those games without Tatum. He went for 52 fantasy points against Miami earlier this year. So there's some upside potential for Kemba at no ownership. Lonzo, even though there's, Drew Holiday back and Zion's now there and like the whole group is there, still Cleveland. Lonzo's still getting over 10 assists in 2 of the last 3 games. He still has low end triple-double upside. So for him, a really strong spot. And then Sexton, yeah, I mean, again, on the flip side of that, there's no Darius Garland. I didn't at the time know the Exum news. I probably would have put Exum in the playbook just as a possible punt. Exum is starting tonight at shooting guard for them. He's a min salary play. But you look at Sexton's recent numbers, averaging 36 fantasy points over his last 6, takes a ton of shots, and Pelicans, another bad defensive team, and Cleveland's at home.
Let's move over to the shooting guard position where we have 4 spend ups. I don't think any of them will be as highly owned as Chris Middleton, but we have 4 spend ups here in Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Jimmy Butler, Fred VanVleet. Beal seems like he's going to be the highest owned of the bunch. Fred VanVleet is in a fantastic matchup against Atlanta. And then Butler, Booker probably go by the wayside in terms of ownership, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see that we basically have sort of a split ownership there amongst those guys. Middleton, obviously, 60%, 50%. That makes all the sense in the world to me. That's where they would be going with that. Game stacking wise, I like Beal, but you and I were talking before we jumped on air. Milwaukee's still a very good defensive team. This is in Milwaukee. So is there a chance that Beal could flop? Possibly, but he's also in a better spot now, knowing there's no Giannis for that game to be a bit more competitive. There's less rim protection, there in Milwaukee now. For Beal to get to the lane, he's gone for 50 straight in 3 straight games now. So we're getting peak Beal production. So I have him as my top or number 2, I guess, shooting guard behind Middleton, given price per dollar. After that, I mean, I do love Fred VanVleet. I mean. Right. Yeah, he's just come back and he's averaging 40 fantasy points a night. Atlanta, if you look at their defense versus position, the worst in the NBA, I think it is against shooting guards, or among the worst teams in the NBA against shooting guards. No worries about the rest of that team being healthy. It's basically been him and Siakam again, sort of running the show. Kyle Lowry's taking a step back. OG's not doing too much. Occasionally, Gasol will have a night, but it's Siakam and VanVleet doing all the damage. And they have a great spot against Atlanta. So he's definitely there. And then, I hate to just discount Booker here, but he's the most expensive of the group.
Right.
And I feel like those other guys can give you 45 to 50 fantasy points tonight. Now, yeah, Booker can certainly go higher. Than that. He's popped off before, but you don't need to pay for it tonight at shooting guard. So
it probably would have been a different story if Ricky Rubio was ruled out, right? And now he's probable.
For sure. I mean, he did have a bad game against Dallas. Again, one off. I'm not going to really just all of a sudden be like, oh, he's never going to do it again. But, bad shooting night against them earlier this year, in Dallas on the road. So, yeah, I don't know. Again, if it was playing Booker, the assist could be there. He double-digit assists a couple games ago. But for me, I put him, below Beal. VanVleet, Middleton for sure.
Also, for transparency's sake, You did mention Milwaukee is a good defensive unit, still number one defensive rated team in basketball currently. So obviously Giannis plays a factor, but he is not the lone. He's not the only person on that team playing defense. So it is interesting. You do have some value down here in Dante DiVincenzo, another Milwaukee Buck. We're not even past shooting guard, and we've had 3 in the playbook. I don't know if that speaks to the amount of exposure we should have or not.
I almost put George Hill, so I mean,
almost could have had 4 guys by shooting guard. And we also have DeLon Wright, who also made my value vault. So we're both on the same line of thinking there. Do you have a preference between the two here?
I mean, your point on DeLon Wright, is the reason he's in there. Read the value vault, read all the content. I had actually not been aware. I know Seth Curry had been starting. I know Porzingis had been back. And Wright, we expected big things out of him, but it hadn't really come. And for me, he kind of was like an out of sight, out of mind play, but you brought him up. I looked into it a little more, and I think he's certainly worthy of the playbook and his ownership, almost 20% on DraftKings. It seems a lot of people are going in that direction. If Porzingis sits, there's going to be more shots to go around, and Wright could certainly be a beneficiary of that. If you're just game stacking, I mean, DiVincenzo's already part of the rotation. There's no Giannis. Usage is going to go around to everybody. And he can give you 30 fantasy points in this matchup. He's gotten, I think it was like 2 steals in 3 of the last 4. If I remember that correctly, he's been piling up, secondary stats. His rebounding has really been on point lately for him as well. It's like 3 or 4 games in a row of at least 6 boards for DiVincenzo. So the secondary stats have been there. It's Washington. He's going to play a big role off the bench. I'm in on that. Kendrick Nunn just ruled out. I would probably consider Tyler Hero at shooting guard now as well. Just given his recent play.
Yeah, I mean, we're at the shooting guard position. I also think it's worthy to note Duncan Robinson was their leading scorer against Orlando. He scored 21 actual points. He's now scored 30 fantasy points or more in back-to-back games without Kendrick Nunn. So I think both Hero and Duncan Robinson, I think Hero is the chalkier of the two. I think he's the sexier, flashier name, so to speak, because Tyler Hero was their first-round draft pick. Yeah. He was the one that had all that hype in Summer League because he was scoring at will in Summer League. But Duncan Robinson, someone not to be slept on, sans Kendrick Nunn.
Robinson had 25 fantasy points against Boston in their first meeting. Now, that game was without Marcus Smart and Gordon Hayward. Those 2 guys are playing. There's no Tatum. So, there are better perimeter defenders, or at least perimeter bodies out there this time for Boston. But, Robinson at 5,100 on DraftKings, and Hero is priced out at 52. So, no real discount on either of them. I feel like Hero still has a higher ceiling of the group.
Yeah, he does more. He definitely does more. You brought up their DK prices, 4,300 on FanDuel for Hero, 4,100 for Robin. So they're much more appealing over on FanDuel than they are DraftKings. I think we could probably find better value on DK and both the guys you have in the playbook in DeLon Wright, and probably Goran Dragic gets a little bump too. Don't forget Goran Dragic. But let's move on to small forward, John, where we. Looking through the playbook, don't have any Milwaukee Bucks, so just, a spoiler alert. But we do have
to make it. So.
Damn, I was actually hoping we could talk about him for the next 10 minutes until the live stream ended. Sorry, guys. I know you guys were as well. I see all the questions piling in. The fantasy. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the chat, but everyone in chat right now is screaming at us to talk about Wesley Matthews. But guys, hold off till after the stream. You can private message John on site. He'll answer every single question up to the minute. But small forward does start with Pascal Siakam, who is small forward / power forward / center, depending on which site you are playing on. He is as close to a lock as this slate is going to get, right?
I think so. I mean, just based off its costs. And I know we've been burned by guaranteeing plays before. Wouldn't be the first time. It's not going to stop me from doing it again. This is the guy that we were paying upwards of $9,000, before his injury. When he came back from injury, he was $9,100 on DraftKings. Obviously, they limited him, so they dumped his price, and now they're, slowly bringing him back up. $8,000 on DraftKings, just $7,600 on FanDuel. Yeah, I mean, he played 37 minutes. He went for 50 fantasy points. I think it was against Atlanta. I mean, it's going up against Atlanta now, which is, again, a terrible defensive team. DeAndre Hunter is going to be a power forward for them. Siakam should feast here. I mean, like I said, it's been Van Vliet, it's been Siakam, the 1-2 punch there in Toronto. I'm buying in. Listen, I have him in the example lineups all over the place today. Ownership on FanDuel, 43%, says it all. I'm a little bit surprised. I guess 18 or 19% could be true for DraftKings, but you can get there with the value. I feel like he should be in your lineups if you can make the salary work.
Ownership is always interesting to me when we're talking about like site to site, considering how much easier it is of a roster build on FanDuel, and that's why I think we do generally see more ownership spread out on DraftKings, because we do have the extra salary on FanDuel. Generally, they are softer with their pricing, so it doesn't necessarily surprise me, but I do agree. I would suspect in cash games it's still north of 40%, just given the ability and the upside at this price. But we do have the rest of the position to break down. We have Toby Harris. I think we can probably take a step back there on Harris. I mean, most of Philly, considering Embiid is just he is their number one usage player. He has a 30% usage rate on the year. So I think Tobias Harris at that price tag can safely be crossed off our player pool, unless you want to, throw a dart on him in tournaments.
Yeah.
And, throw crap against the wall and hope it sticks. But Kelly Oubre has been really good. Ricky Rubio is back. I wonder if that takes you off him a little bit. But
yeah, I mean, not really.
Not really?
No.
What about Gordon? And then Gordon without Tatum. I mean, they're basically in like Gordon without Tatum and Oubre with Rubio. Do you prefer one or the other?
I mean, I like the way Hayward's been playing of late. I may lean there just for some salary savings on DraftKings, or on FanDuel rather. On DraftKings, I mean, Oubre is fine. Again, we're not looking at a ton of ownership. You can even go Jaylen Brown there as well for GBP upside. I think they're all capable of doing the same thing. I think they can all give you 40 fantasy points as an upside play. I like the back-to-back games from Oubre. We saw when he was rolling good earlier this year, even with Rubio in the lineup, like he was giving us big double-double numbers. Like you catch him on a good string, and there's a potential that he goes for it. And 48 fantasy points against Dallas. Prior, if Porzingis sits again, it's an even better spot for him. So, right now, Oubre's drawing like Tim Hardaway Jr. defense, right? So, that's one of the best matchups that we've been attacking for years.
And I would probably venture to say Hayward is viable all formats, and Oubre probably just tournaments only based on volatility.
Yeah, Oubre probably is probably good enough for GBPs for sure. Jaylen Brown, who I kind of wrote about in the Hayward blurb there, he's a GBP play, and I agree. I think Hayward could be in cash games as well as GBP options.
Ersan Ilyasova, I will get it right, is officially starting, which we figured, but is starting tonight at power forward. But you did mention Tim Hardaway Jr. You do have him written up here. Is Tim Hardaway's status based contingent upon Kristaps, or do you still have interest in him regardless?
A little bit of both. I think if Porzingis sits, obviously it increases his potential for taking more shots. And I realize that Seth Curry and Dalen Wright are taking a lot of shots now as well. But we saw Hardaway rolling there when Porzingis was out, and that could just open up the opportunity. He's home. It's Phoenix. It could be a good spot for a guy who we've seen pop off before and how people win GBPs. And I'm not saying like he's got the upside he did when he was with Atlanta or the Knicks anymore, because there is Luka Doncic there to take a lot of the offense away. But if he goes for 35 or 36 fantasy points tonight, we've seen that from him in recent weeks. So again, I need Porzingis to be out there for him, I think, to realize that upside. Other than that, we don't need to go there. Another person who's not in the playbook, but he made some of the example lineups. I mean, you and I talked about him ahead of time, and you probably were maybe considering asking about him, is Troy Brown Jr. There is no Jordan McRae tonight. Troy Brown played over 30 minutes the other night. I think he's certainly a viable option tonight. I anticipate him coming off the bench still, and there being upside potentially for him there. Again, no Giannis, so that game may be a little bit more competitive. We've seen him pop off. he still is competing now with a fully healthy Bertans now,
right,
and Bradley Beal, and there's some other offensive players for him there. But I'm a big Troy Brown mark. I was heading into the year. I like that he can give us a little bit of everything, and if the shot drops, he's efficient, then the upside's there.
I was 100% going to ask about Troy Brown, and I also think it's fair to say if you're going to play someone like Tim Hardaway with the type of GPP, upside he has, play him with Luka, because all his shots are going to be coming off screens and passes from Luka Doncic. I don't think that's a bad correlation play at all. But let's move on to power forward, where we have just a lot of really good plays, John. I mean, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys written up here at power forward, and I think that speaks to how deep the position is, because when you break down and you guys read the playbook every day and look at the playbook, generally that should stand out like a sore thumb, because if 8 players make a position, I mean, that says a lot about that said position. We have at the top, we have a lot of very strong plays. Bam Adebayo, John Collins, Julius Randle here at the top. Do any of those guys stand out? We mentioned Collins starting at center.
Right.
Bam gets a undersized Boston front court, and Julius Randle gets Charlotte here, John. Right. I mean, for me, probably Randle, if I had to guess where your brain is at right now.
So I'm kind of torn a little bit here. I think if I was ranking them right now, I'd go Bam, Randle, Collins. We've just seen Bam have big games before. I know he didn't do it against Boston the first time. That was a little bit surprising. He only had 19 fantasy points in that game, but he's starting to roll again. There's no none. I like the price tag over on FanDuel a little bit better at 7,900 because there was times where he was 9K. So I think that for sure there's a chance for him to be very low owned tonight in that matchup. So I think Bam is fine. Randle, definitely. I gushed about him on the podcast last night. We love this matchup against the Hornets. He's a great price. The usage has been there. The reduction's been there. And then Collins, unfortunately, is going to be third there because he's starting at center, starting against Marc Gasol. Gasol, a really strong defender still, playing a lot of minutes lately. Even though when he comes off the floor, he gets almost an equally athletic Serge Ibaka to deal with. So Collins, I'm probably downgrading a little bit. And I would prefer to play the guy below him in Zion Williamson, to be honest with you.
I would also rather play Zion, especially at $6,300. Even $7,200, John. I mean, I love that, by the way, if you guys read the playbook throughout today, John has listed at the start of the chalk plays, chalk play 1, chalk play 2, and Zion is chalk play number 3, because it's very hard to fade him at 6,300. And it's something we talked about in the podcast. The minutes increase has been quite rapid, huh? Right. I mean, up to 27 in game number 3. I guess my question for you is, when we're projecting Zion minutes tonight, John, do you think that there's another increase? And do you think we could potentially get over 30 here?
I think they'll probably keep him where it's hard to say if there's a trend, because there really isn't. But you think about the first 2 games, he sort of played the same amount of minutes. Then he got a big bump up. So I would think they would rather keep him probably in this 27, 28-minute mark. I don't think he's going to go and play 35. But maybe the next game he plays 32, and he kind of is on his way up. So $6,300 is the reason on FanDuel why we have that ownership there for him. Lower ownership on DraftKings, but I'm still not going to shy away.
Right.
If he's going to play 28 minutes against Cleveland, I mean, he could probably jump over Kevin Love. I don't know how Kevin Love is going to be able to handle the athleticism that Zion's going to have on the floor. I said on the podcast last night, it probably wouldn't shock me if they used a lot of Larry Nance tonight, because Nance is an athletic power forward.
Right.
He's another guy that could match the jumping ability and whatnot. And we've seen Nance, be a solid player at times. I'm not saying they're going to take Love off the floor, but I mean, if they're pairing up, Nance could be a better fit for him than Love could possibly be. But I mean, yeah, Williamson for me is in a lot of my lineups tonight. As you listed, he's chalk play number 3, only because that's just the way the playbook ran. So,
Al Horford, again, another Sixer that just falls by the wayside with Joel Embiid back. Yeah. I think he's a little too pricey, especially I mean, just this position is too deep. We just don't need to go there with a deep back.
Yeah.
Jeremy Grant / Michael Porter, some inception written within the playbook. We have both those guys. Daniel Tice here in the mid-tier. I think all three are very strong. Tice, probably a little too pricey for my liking over on DraftKings, but 30 fantasy points or more in 4 straight games, I think that's pretty viable. And then
it's 6x return on FanDuel.
Right.
So.
6x return on FanDuel is right. If you had to pick, if we're talking about FanDuel specifically, and I use FanDuel specifically only because I want to emphasize Michael Porter's price on FanDuel alone, where he's $5,300. If you had to pick between the 3 guys in a tournament, how would you break that down between Grant, Tice, and Porter? FanDuel specifically because we have Grant at $6K, Tice $52. You mentioned that's a really good price tag for him, and then Michael Porter also at $5,200.
Yeah, I mean the one thing that we always have, going against Porter, and there are a few bigger fans of Michael Porter Jr. than you and I.
Right.
It's the fact that he's not in the starting lineup. Minutes lately are still like low 20s. He's not pumping in as that like 6-man of 25 to 30 a night. It's more 20 to 25. And he's been very productive in that playing time. I wish he just had more minutes, so he's much more of a risk. But that said, he's been getting you double-doubles off the bench, which is nice to see. If I was picking, I'd probably go with Grant just for the minutes are secure. The production's been there. Tice is fine. I think on FanDuel he's a better play because of the block shots are up there. I mean, you look at his per 36 numbers, and he's averaging almost 2 blocks a game. And now Tice has played over 30 minutes in 2 straight games. There's some low-end double-double upside. They have no backup center. They have Vincent Poirier who's played maybe 10 minutes to spell him, or they just go small. So Tice is getting the run unless he fouls out. So 5,200 is certainly a good spot for him. And like I said, for that fact, I don't mind the 57 on DraftKings either, because he's playing. So if he's going to play 30 minutes and get under 6K, then I'm there.
John, we have an interesting lineup note in Philly here. I just want to get your take. Shake Milton is starting at shooting guard. He actually drew a start over the weekend against the Lakers. 25 minutes. He put up 7 actual points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, and a steal, good for 25 fantasy points across 25 minutes. Golden State allowing the 6th most fantasy points to shooting guards. 3,900 on FanDuel, 4,100 on DK. Any interest, Shake Milton, for tonight's slate?
The difference there was no Joel Embiid in that lineup. So
that is true.
We know that Embiid is just a massive usage monster. Is he going to get 9 rebounds with Joel Embiid there?
Nope.
Probably not.
Absolutely not.
You're moving Horford now to power forward. Like, it kind of shifts everybody back around. So, if you want to be contrarian, no one's going to play the guy. So if you're making 20 lineups, throw him in 1, throw him in 2, and get crazy with it if you want to. Try to fit as many stars and scrubs as you can. Like I said, there's enough value. You can play Milton. There you can play. Actually, Milton's only like 4,100 on DraftKings. Not as cheap as I thought he was. But like you can get a little crazy. Exa, Milton, and Ilyasova, and there's basically 3 guys at very cheap costs and spend up if you want to go in that direction.
Right, little stars and scrub. It's a stars and scrub play for sure. Yeah. Let's finish it up. I don't think we need to mention Ersan very much. He's
chalk play number 4.
Chalk play number 4. Currently projected as the highest owned player of the slate, higher than Middleton, higher than Bledsoe, higher than Luka, higher than Zion. He is $3,300 on DraftKings, and he is $3,700 on FanDuel. So play Ersan, please. Center seems pretty cut and dry tonight, John. If you want to spend up, Nikola Jokic and the return of Joel Embiid has to be slightly intriguing considering it is Golden State. It's a position that we've attacked quite a bit this year. And then in the mid-tier, we have DeAndre Ayton, Brook Lopez, and let's face it, Marc Gasol is just too cheap across the industry considering he's playing 30 minutes a night again. Why don't you just break down and assess your thoughts on the center position tonight?
I mean, I think you're right. Embiid didn't make the playbook at the time, but had I known he was going to play, probably would have been in there for the cost. It's a good spot for him here against Golden State. We've been attacking Golden State at the center position all season long. If there's no limitations, I mean, Embiid is certainly, I think I put him actually maybe ahead of Jokic. I don't know if you agree with me there or not, because Jokic is playing very well of late. But just price per dollar, I think Embiid's in a fabulous spot. Ayton against Dallas, that's fine. If Porzingis sits, they'll probably go maybe a little bit of Cauley-Stein. Cauley-Stein expected to play last night, but then didn't play at all. They used Kleber and Porzingis at center. That's a big advantage, I would think, for Ayton if they go and use Kleber over Cauley-Stein should Porzingis end up sitting. Borello, again, another high ownership percentage play. I didn't list him as chalk play number 5, but he could have been. It's a great spot against Washington. All of the guys, once Giannis is off the floor, get a bump in usage, get a bump in production. And Lopez is a big-time shot blocker. So, if he's going to be on the floor more, if he's going to be more involved, the next thing you know, he's swatting shots left and right of everybody driving to the lane. He can break a slate for you, and he's very cheap, $4,800. Over on DraftKings. It's an interesting decision now, James, because they're similar price points. Who do you like more, Lopez or Gasol? I have them both in the playbook, obviously. Gasol, 30 minutes against Atlanta is very appealing, but, Lopez as well.
I think if Lopez was a better rebounder, I think it would be clear-cut because how bad Washington is at rebounding the basketball. But he's so bad.
Does he get more rebounds that there's no Giannis, though?
Potentially, but we've also seen, like you mentioned, in the playbook and prior to getting on the live stream, Ersan has averaged 11 rebounds per game in those 4 starts.
Devontae Graham just ruled out. Malik Monk probably now a fantastic.
So Malik Monk price tag $4,800 on DraftKings, and I believe he is he's $4,400 on FanDuel. Let's just quickly break that down, John, because it's not just Devontae Graham that's impacting. That obviously also impacts Terry Rozier, who is going up against the likes of Elfrid Payton, Frankie Smokes, Dennis Smith Jr. How would you assess, I guess, Charlotte in general? Do you have a preference in people we're using? Do you have a preference in Monk? Do you have a preference in Rozier? Do you think that we should now maybe prioritize one or two of those guys over a Bledsoe or over a Middleton? I mean, just your thoughts on the situation in general.
Yeah, I'm not going to play them over to those guys, but I mean, the way Monk's been playing of late, of course, this is probably not a great opportunity for him to let us down. But, massive game against Milwaukee the other night, when they were playing in Paris. And the game before that, he had 25, I think it was actual points. So, I think Monk becomes another really great value play at shooting guard. Again, I like paying up for Beal and Middleton tonight on FanDuel, but if you don't want to play Beal, if you want to spend up somewhere else, maybe spend up at center or spend up at a double point guard or do whatever you want to do there, you can. You don't have to play it, and you can spend down. I think Monk is a really good spot here against the Knicks.
So just so we are aware, the usage breakdowns with Devontae Graham off the floor, Terry Rozier leads the team, 26.2% usage, not 0.99 fantasy points per minute. Malik Monk actually third on the team in usage, 22.8%, 0.8 fantasy points per minute. The 0.8 might be a little skewed. That's still solid, but skewed because he's been playing much better of late. So I agree with your assessment there. I think Monk becomes a really good value, especially on FanDuel, 4,400. John, it is 6:40, 20 minutes to roster lock. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, it's going to be a crazy slate, probably another high-scoring slate. Don't fade the chalk tonight is what I would say. These guys are going to be highly owned in a game with a 240 total. I think you have to roll with them. Yeah,
I mean, I agree. I think there are nights that you fade chalk, and I think there are reasons why we fade chalk. I don't think there is a reason you fade chalk on a 240 slate. So I agree there, John. But it is 6:40. Let's get out of here. Big thanks to Matt Sells for producing, and we'll catch you guys later.